First item is election of chairman. Do I have any nominations for chairman?
Sir Peter Brown.
Yes,
Second.
I'll second that.
Super.
Only reserve the right to speak.
Do I have any other proposals, chairman? All in favour? That's unanimous.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for that confidence. I've enjoyed my last 2 years and I'm looking forward to at least one. So, and there's also some notes. Go. Okay, let's make a start then. The appointment of vice chairman, it is normal for somebody from the Peterborough part of the authority to take the vice chairmanship. May I please have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Peach.
Councillor Peach, is there a seconder?
Second.
Yeah, second that.
Councillor Swift. Are there any other nominations? No? May I then ask that you raise your hands in support of Councillor Peach? Anybody against? John, I declare you elected for another year.
Thank you, Robert. I'll try and do my best. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you very much. Okay, but Dawn, can we have apologies, please?
Apologies from Councillor Rylance and Reynolds, but also note that Councillor Shellens isn't present.
Yes, I thought he was going, but if you can we notice apologies if he is.
Councillor Shellen said it was his birthday this week, so he may not be around. It was a long birth, but there we go.
Councillor Butcher is also not present.
Councillor Butcher has a meeting in Fenland. He's getting his apologies.
Not a person.
Okay, is that all the apologies? The minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of February. Have you all had a chance to look at them? Shall we go through page one by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Chair,
6.
beg your pardon. You're ahead of me, 6.
It's
Council-
just a typo,
Council-
Chair, on page 7, on subject 104. I don't steal all the line right. I think it's a typo. I think it was Councillor Swift and I forget the other members, but it certainly wasn't myself.
Right. Matter of accuracy, do we want to change this or leave it as it is?
So it wasn't you, it was...
Somebody else.
Councillor Swift.
Councillor Swift, can we put your name in?
Change
Yeah,
that.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
It's all, okay, good.
Shows how he read things very well.
That's page 7. Anything else on page 7?
Yes, Chair. Are we doing matters arising or are we just doing accuracy? Or?
It's just accuracy. We don't do matters arising, I don't.
Oh, that's a shame. Because I would have otherwise asked a question about the review of the non-start performance. But maybe I'll do that.
I'm sure you can find somewhere else later in the agenda.
I will try.
Okay. Anything else on page 7? Page 8. 9. Okay, can I sign the minutes as a correct record?
Yeah.
Thank you. Chairman's announcements. I've just got a few things which I'd like to bring to your attention. And I think first of all it's only right and proper that we welcome our new councillors. We've got David Over here today from Peterborough. Welcome back, as you will remember before. And Kevin Reynolds from Cambridgeshire, who can't be here today for a hospital appointment that's been long-standing. But I'm sure we want to welcome them both back and look forward to their contributions in the coming year. I also would like to thank Councillor Mandy Smith for all her work on the Fire Authority. She's been a member at least as long as I have, if not before, probably 5 or 6 years. And Mandy was always an enthusiastic contributor to our work, and I wish her well, as I'm sure you will, in her capacity as the newly elected Vice Chairman of Cambridgeshire County Council. So she's got a role on her hands. I know she's going to miss her work here, but if you record our thanks to her, please. And also Councillor Sue Allen from Peterborough, who didn't seek re-election. We'd like to thank her for her work in the year. And also I'd just like to say to Councillor Rylance in her absence, she's not very well at the moment. We hope she makes a speedy recovery, and will you convey to her a speedy recovery?
Sure, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to a few general comments if we can. I'd like to thank all members for the contribution that you've made over the past 12 months. It doesn't seem possible now that we're halfway through our term of office. I remember well when we were elected 2 years ago. They've been interesting years, those 2 years, but I think the next two have even a lot more interest to hold for us, and I think they'll be very stimulating years, with changes possibly forthcoming locally and nationally for the fire service. And we will have to wait and see what those might be, but no doubt we will rise to the challenge. I'd also like to thank everybody in the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Fire Service. It doesn't matter what you do or where you come from, that all of us as members, we rely deeply on your professionalism, your help and your support, and I'm pleased to say that we get that at all times. So thank you to everybody for all that you've done to help us in our job. It will not go unnoticed that we have a new fire minister. I think about the third or the fourth in a period of about 4 years. And since the DCLG team seemed to take more than a passing interest in our work, both locally and nationally, I've written to Mark Francois as soon as I heard he'd been appointed, and I've asked him to come and see us and to see what we actually do locally and how we operate, and also to seek a meeting to clear the air of some of the points that have been raised recently with fire ministers about what we do and how we operate. I think we continue to be one of the best fire services in the country, and I want to make sure that is recognised at all levels of government. So hopefully before long we will hear from the Minister, and bearing in mind he represents a constituency within our own region in Essex, he'll take some time out to come and talk to us and help and advise us where, if we are going wrong, he might put us right. So it's a good appointment. I think he will do the job extremely well, and I think it's an opportunity for us to put our case. So they're my opening remarks. We now look forward to another positive year ahead of us, and certainly a second one after that before we finish our work in 2017. So let's now move on. Declarations of interest. Anybody have any declarations to make? Right, thank you. Now going on to decisions. The first one is paper number 7, ICT shared services. Who is going to?
Thank you, Chairman, that's me. Director of Resources unable to be here this afternoon, I'm afraid. He's otherwise engaged on authority business and couldn't make it back. This paper is about one of our better collaborative efforts with Bedfordshire, a shared ICT service which members will remember we set up in about 2013. The shared service is working fundamentally well, but we're now looking at methods and ways of improving it for the future. And of course, as there is in any collaborative effort, we've come across some issues and some problems that need to be overcome. And one of the core problems in that is the fact that members of what are fundamentally one core team are employed by two separate organisations. Some are employed by us, Cambridgeshire, and some are employed obviously by Bedfordshire. And that brings with it some differences in terms of conditions, and that can cause stresses and strains in the team. Add to that of course when we set up the ICT shared service, the organisations that are parties to the collaboration are in slightly different places. So we're slightly better in some places in terms of our ICT infrastructure, and Bedfordshire is slightly better in theirs, and slightly worse in others, etc. So of course, what tends to happen is that all the resource gets dragged into bringing everything up to an equitable standard. And that lends itself to the fact that, in spite of the fact that we have a shared team, there can be a tendency when you have a need to assume that those people that are employed by you are in fact your team, not the shared collaborative team, and that you tend to suck all the resources into particular places at a particular time. Now, that's not to say that the ICT shared service collaboration isn't working well, and we shouldn't look to extend it and perhaps explore other areas for collaborative effort as well. But it is time to renew and have a look at how we can do it better. Now, you'll see appended to this report consultants' report on how we should perhaps take it forward. And without getting into too much detail, because the paper's fairly clear, what the Director of Resources wants from this paper is your endorsement, your permission really, to further explore the setting up of what's called a technical company that both Bedfordshire and Cambridgeshire can take 50% ownership of, but that company would then be responsible for the employment of the people who work within that team and their terms and conditions, and then set up a service level agreement, if you like, between both authorities and the servicing company, which we think will probably help us deal with most of the issues that are preventing the team from optimal performance currently. So at this point in time, what we're asking for is really permission to carry on looking at how we might establish that company, and then come back to members at a later date when we determine how to do it. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm open to the floor. First comment. Councillor Chapman, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I always find this very interesting, because there's so much that can be done with shared services to improve efficiency. But one of the big challenges, which I couldn't really see addressed again, that we tend to have with shared services, is the eventual governance arrangements. If we have a limited company, then we have equal directors nominated from each organisation, presumably, and someone will then chair that board of that company.
Yes, I think the initial proposal will be for a sort of 50% shared company, 50% Cambridgeshire, 50% Bedfordshire, and equal number of directors appointed to the
But they
board.
will elect a chairman of the chairman of that company who will have a casting vote.
We haven't got into the detail of the constitution yet, so I'm unable to answer that question.
I mean, I know that the governance arrangements always do present, they're always a bit of a sticky problem to work out. The paper seems to imply that, well, it explicitly talks about other moving into back office services as well.
Well, I think we need to
in other areas. So we're looking at something which is going to initially set up an IT shared service with a view to exploring other areas, administrative areas or whatever, of both authorities. There's a little bit, like right in saying, it's a little bit like the old GSS model.
not on such a grand
Not
scale.
on a grand scale.
But we already have the ICT shared service. This is looking at ways of improving it. But also, once we've set up that governance structure in that company, then we don't see any reason why we shouldn't potentially start exploring other support functions across Bedfordshire and Cambridgeshire as well, if there's a business case and it makes sense to do so within that governance structure.
Mr. Chairman, I've asked two questions. I have loads of questions, but I don't want to...
Shall we see if there's anybody else on the floor? No, we won't have any time after that. Councillor Saber.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is a drum I've banged a few times before. I agree in principle with the proposal, but my concerns are on a wider level, and that this is an ad hoc reorganisation. I don't mean that in the sense that this particular reorganisation is ad hoc. But it's not part of a systematic, broader review of the structure of services. We are in bed somewhere else with 9 other authorities under insurance for insurance purposes, and we have operation, we have control centre that's shared with Suffolk, and the whole structure of fire service is getting to be Well, and other local governments are going to be very, very messy. That's all. It's a general point. That's all. And it's just a matter of concern, because sooner or later problems must arise out of that. Mainly when people sort of quit, when someone wants to quit and go somewhere else, then you get all sorts of difficult problems with disengagement. So it's just a general point.
Okay. Councillor Giles, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, just on a technical point, Jim. Many of us, I'm sure, deal with other authorities and boards, etc. And one of the ones I'm involved in has got over 200 acronyms. And if I said to you some of the things, you would not have a clue what I was talking about, but we do understand most of them. But it would be very helpful when we've got an acronym, the first line, just explain what that is. And it puts us on the right track. You know? I know we do all know what ICT is, but it's just a technical point. Going on from that, yeah, I think the future of authorities is that more and more shared services will help reduce costs.
Councillor Jamil.
Thank you, Chair. My question is really in terms of security. You know, as you're doing more of this collaborative working, I mean, what safeguards are in place that someone from another authority will, maliciously, want to, hack into our system or do does damage to us? I mean, what is there that we've got to make sure that, with this shared working, we could have shared problems as well?
That's a very fair point. We do have the information security British standard. We're very clear about our firewalls and our security levels that we insist upon. Whether we have got a virtualised network infrastructure with Bedfordshire already, which has been around for some considerable period of time. We do quite some significant penetration testing at times to make sure that hackers and the like will at least struggle to get through it. I won't say it's ever going to be impossible to get through it, and we will continue in that vein. But certainly, I think Council would take part of our risk assessment, where we're considering doing something else with a partner, be it Bedfordshire or somebody else. We will always consider the security of the data that we hold, the information we hold about Cambridgeshire residents and about Cambridgeshire employees. And actually, we will set a standard based on our information security standard, and if they can't meet that, we're not likely to venture into that particular area.
Councillor Bible, sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. I support Model 3 in principle, and obviously the paper that's been provided is very useful. It does raise a number of questions, especially when we look at advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages in Model 3 are quite extensive. Are members going to be briefed on these as this paper goes forward? Because we're looking about securing private finance, and is that going to be easy to achieve? As an example.
If all we're looking to do, Councillor, is explore the proposal a little bit further. If we think this is a real runner, then I would expect the Director of Resources to bring back a full and thorough business case for doing it, with an accompanying risk assessment on all particular areas.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
I won't, because a lot of the things that have come to mind are things which probably I can discuss privately at this stage. But there is just one thing which I wanted to mention, and that is that one of the big benefits of this sort of arrangement, having an arm's length service, and especially with IT, is that when you require expensive short-term resource on something, the IT world is renowned for bringing in technical contractors for short periods of time. And I always feel that that's at conflict with the public service model, where you tend to go with 2 staff in, and there tends to be there's a tendency to actually employ people on into the staff, into that framework, rather than use the IT marketing rates. Sorry, was that? Yeah. So anyway, I just think that that's something that needs to be considered and built into a further paper, how those dynamics will work.
I think that's actually critical, Councillor Chapman, because one of the issues we have with two sets of market rate, because of hay conditions and hay grades, it's sometimes very difficult to meet the market supplements that are required for some IT specialist folk. So it's hoping that this new structure will allow us to perhaps be a little more flexible in there, and then determine what is the core staff that we need to keep our network and infrastructure running, and then what we can contract out at a reasonable cost if it makes sense to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Lessing, sorry.
I'm very happy for this paper to go forward and to have more knowledge come back to this committee. I would quite like in the next paper to have an analysis of why you're looking at these options and not looking at buying in from another shared service, for example, from LGSS. And I have a feeling that you've told us before that was because the corporate support services for fire services are quite specific and there are sort of specialist bits of knowledge that you have to have. I think it would be useful for us when we make a decision on this to be able to look at that as one of the options and see what the different possibilities for that would be, because if you are just looking at corporate support services, those are also provided by LGSS, for example, and it would be interesting to see that as one of the options, which it isn't. Does that seem useful?
No, it makes sense. Local government shared service, we have explored it before in certain areas. And if you're standard local government, the LGSS is probably likely to do a very good job. The problem is that in order to service fire, they need some specialist knowledge, which means they will employ different staff, which starts to undermine the business case. But
Could you just have a paragraph on why that isn't one of the options in the next paper?
Anyone else? In which case, can we go back to page 1? We asked to note the options report, and I gather it's going to come back to authority in 2015. October 2015, and you noted the requirements from members.
Yes.
Additional information.
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shall we move on then to item number 8, Treasury Management Policy Amendment Investments. Again, this was to be Natalie, but he's otherwise engaged, so Amy, would you like to take over?
Thank you, Chairman. This paper is in regards to our investments and our reserves. You're asked to have a look at the current position of our investments and to agree an amendment to the Treasury Management Policy. If you look at point 5, this shows our current position of investments. This is likely to increase due to Transformation Fund grant that we're going to receive, pension lump sum and our parkside development income. Obviously, as our reserves increase and we don't use them, we need to look at how we invest in the funds. Currently, we only invest in UK institutions, and Natalie and I have had a discussion about opening up our options, because at the moment we are limited to just UK institutions. So we are requesting that we amend our policy to include non-UK institutions and banks, still with the same criteria as we have for UK institutions. And in fact, some of the ratings for non-UK banks are better than the UK banks. We'll also limit our investment to 2 million rather than the 4 million that we have in UK institutions. And it just really gives us the option. We're not asking for, we want to invest in a non-UK institution. We just like to open up our options so that if we need to do that and we find our reserves are increasing, we've got some other options rather than putting all our eggs in one basket. Hopefully we'll get some better returns and we'll be able to share our risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Members? David, Councillor Oldham.
I'm a little bit concerned about this. Coming from Peterborough, the country Iceland keeps coming round and round in my mind, and that certainly had AAA ratings just before all the banks crashed. The other thing is I'm sure you'll get good rates of return from banks in Europe, particularly Greek banks at the moment, and I'm a little bit concerned about going outside the country for a number of reasons, but mainly I think that we can rest fairly at ease with UK investments, and maybe we even have a duty to keep the money in this country, and I think it would be very brave to invest elsewhere at this moment and in the near future.
Councillor Lessing.
I'd just like to put a counter view in that I think it is part of the duty of this final authority to try and get the maximum it can for its investments, and actually we have a large quantity of, we have a surprisingly large amount of cash invested. I think that if we do limit our investment capacity too strictly, that will limit the returns that we can get in this authority, and I'm not convinced that we will be serving the public in the best way by doing that. I think we do need to be very careful about where we invest, but I think that we don't make our risk profile any less by keeping all of our money in the UK. Actually, that reduces your ability to spread risk and therefore reduces your risk profile. So I think I would be in favour of adding non-UK bank institutions. On the AAA rating issue, you're right, there was a problem with AAA rated organisations not being reliable, but unfortunately I don't think that was something that could be perceived in that. I think that kind of risk is always likely to be present. Can I ask this, sorry, on a different point, all of our investments have a maximum period of 363 days. I'm wondering whether that actually reduces our ability to get the best return.
I think that was decided quite a while ago because
I just wonder whether that should be reviewed.
it could be reviewed. I could get some
If
figures.
we could invest for a longer term, we might get a better result. But I don't think we should make that decision today. It's just maybe something we should ask to come back to the committee.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. I appreciate, having heard David's comments, I appreciate that Peterborough is a little bit further, closer to Iceland. I actually went to Iceland a couple of times in recent years, and I have to say, if anyone who was making an investment in Iceland, they would have realised how bad it was to invest in banks in a country that's completely volcanic. So I suggest that, no, I'm not going to suggest that our finance officers visit every country before they invest in it. What I would like to say is that it's a good idea for shorts to go. Yeah. But I think the big problem was not only Standard & Poor's ratings of banks a few years ago, but also the individual guarantees that were available in different countries weren't being made clear, and so the risk was far greater than the investors realised. And I think that when we assess risk, we need to look at other factors other than ratings.
Thank you.
Well,
Anybody else? Councillor
Chair,
Sayers.
just very brief. Again, very brief. It's an interesting day to be discussing this, isn't it? When so many big banks have been fined so much money for doing things they shouldn't be doing. The reserves are starting to accrue. I mean, 13 million quid. Does that represent some sort of liability? Because if you were sat in Whitehall at the time of acute austerity, we looked at what we had in the bank and say, well, you don't need as much money this year, or instruct us to use some of the reserves, is what I'm saying. Because we went through this, I don't know if anybody here, but well, at that time on the police, we went through this with the police, where Keith Walters challenged the police authority about the size of the reserves and actually used a lot of the money to put into actual use. There is a danger in having, to be seen to be having substantial reserves at the present time. Again, it's a non-specific point, but it's an awful lot of money over the bank.
Anybody else? Well, colleagues, we are invited to note the current position, and whilst several members have expressed certain concerns, I think to be noted, I still think we must be in the hands of Matthew on this. For some reason, Matthew has got the golden touch with our money. Sorry, Tim, do you want to speak?
Chairman, yes, you say that the authority is asked to note the current position of the investments, but there is an and there, and agree the amendment to the policy.
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah. not just no.
No, that's right, I apologise. So, are we all happy with the amendment to the policy?
No.
Can I take a look?
Right, okay, let's take a vote. Those in favour? Yeah. Against? Any abstentions? Right, the amendment is carried. Can I just ask when we might hear from Matthew again about that? There's no date for bringing it back, but I think it's something that we might like to have a regular handle on.
Good idea, Chair.
On his return, Chairman, we'll consult with him and ask him to bring some further information, perhaps to the next authority.
I think that would be a good idea, perhaps on a regular basis for the time being.
Could you also cover the element of risk in it? So I'm just the opinion of David on this really. Can you go into some more detail about the risk element of it?
Well, I was considering myself some explanation about the process that's gone through before money is placed in any particular investment arena.
And I think the last thing I want is the minister coming down with us now holding too much money.
Yeah.
That's just about being a kibosh. Okay, let's move on then. Sorry?
I said for being prudent.
Yeah. Agenda item 9, Integrated Risk Management Plan to 2019. This is in draft form. I have a note of Ryan Stacey is dealing with this, but
He's also otherwise engaged at the moment and
Neil, would you like to speak to this one, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The Integrated Risk Management Plan, our current one runs ran until April this year, so as it has expired. Obviously because of the elections we're unable to bring anything to you sooner, but what we're proposing is the new amended IRMP, which looks not wholly dissimilar to the last one, to be approved today as moving forward, and also to agree to perhaps an alternative consultation. Normally we'd have a consultation period of 12 weeks. What we're actually proposing here is a consultation period of 6 weeks. I'll discuss that in a minute. The national framework requires all fire authorities to produce an IRMP. As I said, our current one has expired in April. So this one, proposing it runs from 2015 to 2019, with a caveat to that. Basically, we don't know what the government are going to do in terms of additional cuts to the service. Obviously, we have our expectations. We know that our expectations for the next 2 years, but after that, we're not sure what they're going to be. So our proposal is that we amend our RMP on an annual basis, which is what we started to do anyway. And so once we know what is actually going to happen to us, we can make any additional amendments into the IRMP and then go out to consultation as appropriate.
Sorry, Chair.
So what we're suggesting is we go out for proportionate consultation as and when it's deemed required, which we've done before. We've got Swaffham, Ballbeck and Burwell Fire Station merger, the new firefighter duty system, and redesignation of the crew at Huntingdon Fire Station, just as examples. So we're suggesting that is a better system. So proposing that we only go out for a 6-week consultation this time, in the normal way, written consultation to the general public. But as and when we've got something more specific and targeted, we go out to full consultation. The IRMP is there for you to read and digest. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Okay. Members? Councillor Giles.
On previous consultations, how many responses have you had from the public?
In all honesty, the responses to our previous consultations have been extremely poor.
That's
We
based
get-
on 12 weeks.
Yes, on the 12-week consultation. From the public, it's very poor. We obviously do go around to our own staff, and we do get responses from our own staff, and we normally do a roadshow and perhaps go around to the whole-time stations and invite other people in. And that's what we've done in the past. But in terms of the public, it is very poor. We get very, very limited responses, which is one of the reasons we're suggesting it's not the best way of doing it.
So reducing it to 6 weeks is not going to encourage people to or discourage them.
I don't think it'll make any difference at all, to be perfectly honest, to go out online or in other communications. But the important bit will be, if we're doing something of more significance, as we have in the past, we'll go out to a full consultation, and we deem that to be a more appropriate way of consulting with the local community who are more likely to be affected.
I note your remark about being more appropriate. Can I just ask you, in the light of the scratches on our backs at the moment for issues of transparency, how do you feel transparency is going to connect with this particular item if we're reducing the period from 12 to 6? I'm just conscious that this is where the spotlight is on us, that we are perhaps not being transparent enough in some of the things we deal with. Is this going to be one of them?
Well, to be honest, it is suggested that you consider alternatives to the 12-week consultation, and that is part of the guidance anyway. This IRMP is very similar to the existing IRMP, primarily because we're not yet sure of the final position we're going to be in regarding the cuts. So we're not making any significant changes. So it's not, as I say, it's not dissimilar to the current or the one that's just expired. So I don't think there'll be an issue there. Of course, if you'd rather we go out for a 12-week consultation, then we can. There's no issue there. But I don't think having a 12-week consultation or 6-week consultation will make any great difference to the transparency, as long as we communicate it in a sensible way.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. You did mention that, well, the report says targeted consultation, but you said to the general public, so is it going to be targeted or not?
So this first one, going out for this one, we have to go out. There's guidelines on how we go out for consultation. It will be done. We go out to our partners. We'll go out to the service, and we will also go out to the public. So in that sense, it's targeted to some organisations which we know will be affected, but the general public will also be consulted with, and that will primarily be done online.
Thank you.
And how many members of the general public can know really what you're talking about?
If I could just say, our RMP, the first one we wrote many years ago, when I first came to this service, was a document that consisted of over 200 pages, and I totally agree. The chances of anybody reading it, well, the best thing for it was actually to hold the door open, to be perfectly frank. Whereas the one we do now is a much leaner document, much easier to read, and fairly specific. So I think it probably does mean more to some people, but I do take your point. It's not going to be of great interest to many people.
Any other members wishing to speak? Chief?
I think my point, Chairman, thank you, links into Councillor Swift's point. We did have a joint consultative committee a few days ago, and a point was raised by the union. I think it was a good point. I think it comes into the transparency issue and the issue you've just mentioned, Councillor Swift, which is this document as accessible and readable and as in plainer English as it could be? And the answer is probably no. So as part of that consultation process, or part of that process, we'll get media team to have a really good look at it. The union have provided us with a couple of examples of others which are very glossy with pictures, and there's not much visual indicators here of what our key points are, and actually we could probably do a little bit more of that to make it more accessible and equally such more transparent. But I agree with ACO Newbury that in the end, if for transparency, I don't think it's going to make any difference. If I'm honest, I don't think it's going to make any difference to the number of responses we get either. But if we want to be perceived as being as transparent and complying with the code as much as we possibly can, then 12 weeks is obviously the recommendation.
I think we can take it for granted that.
Sorry, 12 weeks is recommendation from the code for consultation as opposed to the 6 weeks we've got in here, councillors, what I mean.
I think you can take it for granted that all members will want to be seen as transparent, but we'll now ask them whether they want to go for 6 or 12 weeks.
Could I just come in, Chair, and ask the question, what are the cost implications for us as a borough authority? Because ultimately is that, you know, there's this balance of transparency and obviously spending taxpayers' money for a consultation that's probably not going to make much difference between 12 and 6 weeks. I'm personally in favour of 6 weeks. Let's just get it out there and get it done. And I take on board. I'm actually sitting on the transparency group that's looking on the overview scrutiny committee. So yes, I'll take it on board. But this is balance we've got to be seen to see. I think that's just my personal opinion.
From a financial perspective, actually it's just another 6 weeks in time. I don't think financially it's going to make any difference to us whatsoever.
Councillor Jamil?
In terms of responses, what is the best response we've ever had? So, we can put that into perspective on anything you've done. Are we talking hundreds? Are we talking double numbers? I presume when a fire station is going to close down, I presume you probably get more, rather than something that's 200 pages.
You make a key point there. You make a key point there, councillor, because even though we're recommending 6 weeks for this document, if we, as a result of authority meetings or proposals that come forward, determine to do something specific, like, for example, shut Swaffham station and building one Burwell, then we always go out to a full proper consultation on top of that as well. So it's not as if we do anything meaningful and then pretend we've consulted on it through a 6 week document like that. It's not our mode of operation. It's not how we work. I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but I do know that I'd be extremely pleased with 100. I know that.
We are lucky if we're getting into double figures. We don't normally get into triple figures. If you include the staff, we'd probably just about touch 100 if we're lucky.
I move 6 weeks, Chair. Move 6 weeks.
Right, okay.
Chair, before we continue, I just need to ask a question. If parish councils are consulted regularly, is it not true that many parish councils only meet bi-monthly? So a 6 week period could miss many of the parish councils.
Well, I'll take your word on the bi-monthly meetings of parish councils, but yes, then obviously there is potential that we could miss them entirely.
And you won't get parish councils going onto the fire services webpage just to have a look on a regular basis as well. So you might miss a fair number of small authorities who would be concerned because response times for some of the rural areas are limited. So it's just a thought with regards to time. And
as long as we select the period, would we not be able to ensure that we hit them all? Unless my maths is...
You're always going to miss one or two, but yes, if you go for the right date.
Right.
And it's almost impossible. It's not worthwhile trawling through every parish council site to see when their meetings are, but if you say on the 1st of the month and then 6 weeks, fair enough. If you have a definite date, you're going to hit most of them.
If that's a concern, then there's nothing to stop us from ensuring that all parish councils are consulted with as part of the process.
I would support Councillor Swift's proposal if the parish councils are taken into consideration, and at least most of them consulted.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
Right, so Barry.
Sorry, I'd like to follow up on a point I can't remember who made it about the accessibility of this document and the likelihood that people will respond. If I take just page 3, the first page of text, and completely at random, there's a sentence on the left which says this document is written within the context of the continued reductions in public sector spending, resulting in the need for us to find ways to ensure the optimum utilisation of our resources in order to maintain the quality of service we provide and to further reduce the level of risk in the community. I don't think many people will really engage with a sentence of that nature. But on the other side of the page, there are many independencies in the planning process, and for this reason we intend to monitor and progress and review the targets set out in the document to ensure the integrated risk management plan process is fully, sorry I get short of breath, is fully integrated into the corporate planning process. I just don't think that if you want members of the public to respond to this, that you can put a paragraph into a whole paragraph into a sentence. And I think these are important issues, and we do want to increase the response. So I would suggest that we look at the presentation of this document, certainly for future issues.
I think this is a good opportunity for the Comms Department to start some new work and to get their heads around some of the things like this that we have to put in the public domain. So I would like to follow up on the suggestion that the Chief put, that perhaps it goes to Comms first to have a good look at, to see is it fit for purpose to go for consultation.
We'll do that, Chairman.
And if we do that, then are you happy with the recommendation? Target consultation of 6 weeks, as long as the parishes are involved.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Just taking on the point of going back to the parish councils, if you want responses from all the parish councils, in Cambridgeshire alone there's 103 parish councils. I don't know how many there are in Huntingdonshire.
There'd be 1,000 overall, wouldn't
Pardon?
there? There'd be 1,000 all over the country.
All over Huntingdon. Huntingdonshire. So you should get a much bigger response than you've got.
Well, let's be realistic.
Yeah.
Even if they're all consulted, they don't all respond. I mean, that just isn't going to happen.
Well, if it's worded correctly, your response is required.
Well,
You can't require it, you could actually word it like that, couldn't you?
well, I think the first point is to take forward the suggestion that we agree that this is not in a form to go for public consultation. So we need to look at it. So we can't put it out until we've dealt with that. Then the other question is, are you happy to go for the 6 weeks as long as all the parishes are given the opportunity?
Yes.
I mean, normally if they're not meeting, the clerk will get onto the chairman and say, look, I've had this, we haven't got a meeting, what do you want me to do? We just can't sit around and wait for everybody all the time. We've got to give them a chance to consult, but you've got to stick with some time. Councillor Nessie.
If we're going to ask it to go to comms before it goes out, presumably we would then need to delegate authority to somebody in order to approve the fact that what comms have come up with is a suitable document for that consultation. Is that, I think?
You can delegate to an officer in consultation with the chairman.
Correct.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
Which officer do you have to delegate to?
I imagine the chief.
Makes sense.
Councillor Wilson.
I just wanted to ask, because I believe that the current IRMP is no longer in.
Expired, mate.
So, is it a problem if we extend the timing of this going out?
I don't see it as a problem because we're obviously working on it, and we can continue with the existing. This is very similar to the existing, so I don't see that as being a particular issue.
Okay, so are you all happy with the recommendation? Good, let's let them move on to the next item, which is the 5-year blueprint, agenda item 10, and this again is Neil.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot when I was doing this one. Yes, the authority is going to ask to approve both the blueprint and the corporate priorities attached to appendices 1 and 2 respectively. Item 4.1. To support the service in the strategic planning process, a 5-year blueprint is produced describing the desired outcomes against the strategic aims, which are operational excellence, community safety excellence, value for money, and people. And that's for the duration of the next 5 years. I think the rest is self-explanatory. The corporate priorities themselves are contained in Appendix 2, and they are actually the same as last year, which are continued service improvement, preparation for the next CSR and workforce development. Hopefully that is self-explanatory.
Right, members, Councillor Lessinger.
Sorry, I should have raised this earlier, but use the pieces on the floor flags this, but I'm not happy to approve this today because I think it's a huge document. I think approving the blueprint and corporate priorities. I mean, if they haven't changed since last year, they probably should have done. I think that there are new members on this fire authority who won't have been through this process last year. I'm not aware. If this paper has been to lots of other committees and I've missed them, please tell me. But I'm not aware that it has. And I think approving the blueprint and corporate priorities on sort of this amount of discussion doesn't strike me as the right thing to do. I think that we should delay this one unless there's really urgent need for it to go through today and have a seminar and a look at our corporate priorities and our direction of travel, ideally in the light of the CSR when it comes out, and have a review of what our direction of travel is. It just seems to me that it's come to us without very much coverage. I mean, it's a very large thing to be approving our corporate priorities and blueprints for a 5-year plan, and when you look at the plan, it's got a lot of things for next year and then very little in lots of the columns for subsequent years, and that's not surprising because we don't actually know what the direction of travel for the fire service is, but we should be having that discussion, not just deciding what to start with without having that discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Sales.
Fine, thank you. I feel it's really unfortunate that officers have been put in the position of having to produce this, because if they had a crystal ball, they knew what was going to happen in 3 years' time, for instance, we might be a bit wiser. But at the moment, there are quite simply too many unknowns to sign up for a 5-year deal. I know we review it, that's a rolling programme, but there's just too many unknowns for me to support. There's not a criticism, it's just a bare statement of fact that we don't know what's going to happen.
Anybody else wish to comment? Chief, I think I want to come to you for your comments before we take any further.
Councillor Sells is right. This document, particularly beyond year one, really, is a bit of crystal ball gazing by the senior leadership team into what we think might happen or might occur, in order to sort of start preparing ourselves. But Councillor Nesting I take your point, Councillor Nesting. I mean, it would be a useful thing, and probably take a couple of hours to have a seminar and walk through the thinking and why we've done what we've done, because it takes us a couple of days sitting down, locked in a room to do that thinking and come up with the plan. And I have absolutely no problem with delaying this, because on the basis of there being nothing else in its absence, the team will carry on doing what it thinks is right to do anyway, as you'd expect us to do from a professional sense. So I've no issue if we want to do this in a seminar between now and October, or before the October meeting, and then bring this back. I'm happy to do that. It doesn't make any difference, and I support your point that it's a big document and probably needs some explanation.
Any other members wishing to comment? I tend to agree with Councillor Nestor. I mean, we've got a lot on our plate coming up over the next year or so. Major decisions which we're going to have to take. And it seems to me that this ought to roll in as part of those decisions. There may be things in those decisions that will affect this paper. And if you're saying that it's not going to be absolutely crucial to pass this today, I think we should roll it over and keep looking at it until such time as we can bring all the decisions together. Are you all happy with that? Thank you. Right, next one Right, okay. Item 11 is the appointments which have just been circulated in the last 5 minutes. I assume therefore that all you as group leaders have put in your necessary candidates for the appointments and that you are happy to approve it. Okay, is that okay with you, John? Right, next item is item 12, Fire and Rescue Service Insurance Consortium. Amy, would you like to comment, please?
Chairman, the insurance pool was agreed last February that would become a full member of the new mutual company. Matthew and I have been attending meetings throughout the year to push this forward, and we have been taking part in various telephone conference calls, getting all of our information gathered, all of our risk registers up to date, all of our historic claims data put together, and we are pushing forward with forming that mutual company now. We just wanted to give you an update as to where we are. Regis Mutual Management were appointed through a procurement process to assist in the formation of the pooling company, and they are managing the pool on behalf of the consortium. We do take part in weekly telephone conference calls, sharing information, sharing claims data, and utilising the insurance and risk specialists from other fire and rescue services that are involved. The target go-live date is still the 1st of November 2015, and as I said, we'll be focusing on the creation of the company, and I kindly nominated Matthew to be part of the evaluation team for the procurement of the reinsurance for the higher level aggregate insurance. A final decision will need to be taken by the 9 members of the consortium in September, and we'll give you a further update at the Fire Authority in October 2015.
Thank you. Members' comments? Agreed. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Chapman.
Too fast for me. Can you tell me who underwrites this pool? Who are the underwriters?
Well, the pool, we self-insure up to a certain level. Appendix 1. So we'll be self-insuring up to the figures shown here. And then we will have we will go out to procurement to procure a insurance through the normal means
So we've underwrite
for the higher.
Lloyd.
Yes, through that route. Hopefully a bit more competition this time.
Okay, does that answer your point, Ken? Right, okay. So we're now on to item 13, local pension board update.
Let's go back to item 11. Sorry. Which was the appointments. Yeah.
Yes.
In that there were supposed to be 7 appointments in the Joint Consultative Committee, and our appointments to that committee seems to have fallen off.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Can I put Bob in?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, yes. Okay. Right, so you are on to the local pension board update, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The Fire Authority will be aware the establishment of the local pension board is now a statutory requirement and became live 1st of April this year. We are in the process of establishing the board. The board requires 2 employee representatives who are members of the scheme to sit on the board, and 2 from the employer side. We already had the 2 from the employer side, Area Commander Rick Hilton and Miss Jackson here is obviously too exciting life and needs it dulled down just a tad. And we're well on our way. We just don't have, we've only had 1 applicant for the employee side, so we're now in the process of going out to retired firefighters in receipt of their pension to see if anyone wants to take up that second slot. I have absolutely no idea what we do if no one comes forward about a second
That's
slot.
the question I was going to ask.
Constitutionally, I'm sure we'll find a way around that somewhere. In terms of reference for the board, our board members that we haven't forgotten about it. We're on our way with it. We're just struggling to find the fourth member at this time.
Any questions? Agreement? Thank you. We now move to the next item, which is the water carrier relocation. Now, we had this on the agenda of the JCC on Monday, and there was some sort of dispute as to where we're going to be with it. I just wondered, Chief, have you managed to consult with the unions and resolve this crisis?
Well, we can hand over to ACO Newbury, who's going to present the paper, and I think we'll cover off most of the issues that the union raised, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, we are redeveloping the Yaxley Fire Station. That's what the cause of this is. Yaxley Fire Station will be temporarily moved to another site. That site can only house a single appliance, and we'll be there for approximately 2 years. The new station being built has only got planning permission for a single bay appliance as well. And consequently, we've got to find a home for the water carrier. The proposal is that we move it to Ramsey, where the crewing at Ramsey suggests that we'd be able to crew the water carrier most of the time. They've got a fairly good availability for their first appliance. The second appliance at Ramsey, the availability is very poor. In fact, it's down to approximately 7% this year, 7% availability. The number of call volume is also very, very small. However, what we're proposing is that following the joint consultation committee on Monday, that we'd just like to reiterate the fact that we're not making any permanent changes to the fire cover at Ramsey. Were we going to actually do that, then we would obviously have to go out to a full consultation. What we're suggesting is we remove the second appliance at Ramsey in the short term, because the crewing doesn't allow us to crew that appliance. So that would enable us to put the water carrier in there where we can. We do feel that we'll be able to create more, probably nearly all of the time. The decision to move the water carrier to Ramsey is obviously an operationally expedient decision. Struggling to crew its second pump with that availability only at 7%, the water carrier only requires a crew of 2. We're also going to train St Ives up, and so St Ives will be able to utilise the water carrier in those circumstances where Ramsey are not available. But I think the important point to say is, if there's going to be any changes to the fire cover at Ramsey in the future, then obviously we'll go out to a full consultation in an appropriate manner, as we have in previous occasions. We don't actually believe that therefore there is an issue here, because we're not removing the water carrier on a permanent basis.
Thank you. Has that position been resolved with the unions following Monday's meeting?
We haven't had the opportunity to talk to the unions since Monday.
Any comments, please?
This is probably a naive comment, but Ramsey's not known for being next door to a really good road system to get its water carrier out and about. Or is that just a silly question?
No, it's a valid question. It's one of the things we did look at, because we originally looked at putting the appliance at St Ives. However, the crewing at St Ives is such that we wouldn't be able to crew the water carrier to any degree more than we do at the moment. So Ramsey was seen as the better option from that perspective. And in terms of where it goes, the number of uses it tends to be used in the remote rural locations anyway, where there are poor water supply.
Okay. Councillor Peach.
I was just really seeking a bit of clarification, because obviously I was part of this discussion on Monday, and I think you reiterated today that this moving it from Yaxley wasn't a permanent solution, but then I think then you said that the new station at Gatch has only got planning permission for the one bay or the one engine that will be there. So obviously it is a permanent departure from Gatch.
Correct.
I think, okay, Chairman. I think it's important to understand that the water carrier is not a first strike fire appliance. It's not a fire appliance that's going to carry rescue equipment, rescue from a fire or from your car. This is a vehicle that transports water around when we're firefighting in rural areas. Its time and attendance is obviously important, but it's not as critical as a first strike fire engine. So its location in the county, as long as it sits in a kind of rural area of the county, is not really one of operational difficulty. I think where the Fire Brigade Union had a valid point was we appear to be. I spoke at the JCC about removing the second appliance from Ramsey, the second fire engine from Ramsey, but I said that in the context of recognising that they don't have the numbers to crew it at the moment, and recognising that having that appliance there then puts an additional workload for standard testing and servicing and all that sort of thing on the firefighters that do exist there. So, as Mr. Newby's explained, it was expedient to put the water carrier there at the time and remove the second appliance until such time as crewing steps up at Ramsey. Now, we haven't diminished our efforts to try and get further crew at Ramsey, and if, you know, in the next few months they have a rush of people wanting to be retained firefighters or on-call firefighters of the right standard, then we will put that appliance back. You have my absolute assurance over that. And any decision in the future to remove the second appliance is obviously a decision for the fire authority, not a decision for officers alone.
Councillor Ashwood.
Yes, thank you, Chair. What would happen to that second appliance once it was removed from Ramsey?
Whilst it's removed from Ramsey, it will probably sit at workshops and probably act as a spare. So it will be kept fully serviceable and stowed.
Councillor Safe.
I just wanted to know how often this the water carrier is used.
Off the top of my head, I'm from memory, I think it's about 25, 30 times a year.
Oh,
It's not,
that's more than I would have thought.
I mean, I could ask, which you don't know.
Yeah. It's approximately used 20 times a year.
Thank you. Councillor Loyens.
Does this water carrier have to be inside a fire station? Can't we just park in the yard? Or do you store your vehicles in little sheds, little buildings?
We
Because when you talk about moving an appliance out and back to put a tanker could sit in a flipping yard, surely. Most of the vehicles in the country sit in yards.
I appreciate it, Councillor, but as an emergency service, we prefer to keep them, I suppose, snug and warm, and charged, which is important,
Well, yeah.
and especially with a vehicle that only goes out occasionally, and obviously all our charging points and our stations are geared up for keeping our appliances in good order and ready to go when they're needed. So we tend not, if we can possibly avoid it, to leave any of our emergency response vehicles out in the open.
Yeah, but the tanker isn't an emergency vehicle, as
Well,
already said.
it is. If you're firefighting in a rural area where you're very short, you do need the water carrier is a very valuable piece of equipment.
Point taken.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Right. So where are we going to end up with this? Are we going to just wait and see what happens at the end of the period? Or?
I think we're planning to have a paper coming at the end of 2015 or possibly the beginning of March about the future of the on-call and some recommendations and potential solutions for that. And I think, Chairman, it will all be wrapped up in terms of trying to get the authority to reach final decision on where things should sit during that process.
Everybody happy with that? Right, thank you. In that case, we'll now move on to 15, which is the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 26th of March, which is on the green paper at the back of your agenda. Councillor Butcher isn't here today, but let's just perhaps run through it page by page. Anything on page 1 anybody wishes to comment on? Go to page page 3. 4 and 5. Everybody happy with that report? Thank you. In which case, that brings us to the conclusion of the public part of the meeting, and we now go to a motion, item 16.